So if you've been thinking about building a new construction home here in 2024 in Sarasota County, Charlotte County, or Manatee County, Florida, there have been some changes that you're definitely going to want to know about from 2023. So we brought our preferred lender, Manny, from Centennial Bank here, and we are going to be discussing kind of what the loan situation looks like when you are either looking to build a custom home, whether that be with us, Jane Development Group, and my business partner, or with another builder here in Sarasota County, or if you're looking to buy a spec house as well. So Manny, I appreciate you hopping on this video and kind of breaking down kind of what the loan process looks like in terms of if someone's looking to build a custom home or either just basically buy a new construction house.
Absolutely.
So I think let's start out with the custom home building first. And what does that look like, would you say, in terms of what's the first step of the loan process for a custom home?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. No, it's always a pleasure being with you. The construction process, first step is always with the application. Application is a starting point for everybody, just because that gives us the navigational path of credit, income, and assets. And then we entertain property as well as the fourth element and last element. But credit, income, and assets with the application is your first starting point. Typically, we go about that one of three ways. We could do that in person, which takes about 30 minutes, give or take.
Sure.
If you do that practice, it's always suggested to go ahead and bring in your documentation just so you can be a little more efficient. That's just a suggested practice. Second, is our app, very user-friendly. People fall in love with it because you can upload docs and whatnot. And then third, over a phone call, which typically takes about 20 minutes as well. So first starting point is always the application for sure, just so you can figure out your navigational path.
Okay, and when does the credit usually get pulled at that point?
Within 24 hours of the application coming in.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So basically you want to be a serious person that's considering building before you say do the application, because if they pull your credit, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, many people want to wait for a certain situation to happen before they apply.
Right.
I always tell people, look, we'll always go at your own pace, no pressure whatsoever. However, it is suggested that you go ahead and apply sooner than later, just in case you do have to maneuver or pivot in any way.
Right.
So remember, the lender's always on your side. They're always there to help you close. So it's okay to be transparent with the lender and do things as soon as possible.
Right. So how does that work for, like, say, our clients? What should their first process be now? Say they're like, hey, I want to work with you and your business partner, Josh, on helping us build a house, right? And we have a few loans going on currently right now, ranging from 500 to 1.3 million in terms of home builds.
Right.
So there is a wide range. Obviously, customs don't have to be multi-million-dollar homes. They can be $500,000, $600,000 homes.
Right.
So with that being said, let's just say a person comes to us and is like, hey, Noah, we would love to build a home with you guys. And, what's the step that we need to take, such as getting the loan, right, doing the application. But how does that coincide with, let's just say they don't have building plans because it's a custom home. And I know that to close on the loan, we have to meet all these certain qualifications and the checklist has to be fully completed.
Absolutely.
So how do you think that we should go about, or a client should go about, balancing kind of what that loan process looks like, along with building a custom home with really not knowing the timeline for how long it's going to take to get engineered plans?
Those are great questions. I mean, knowing the timeline is a critical component, especially when you're in a rising rate environment.
Right.
We want to have a good enough idea as to when we can close. So that being said, you do want to have your plans and specs in line, your surveys for your lands as well as your home being built on it.
Right.
Typically, those things take a little bit of time. So it's the lender's responsibility to understand where you're at in the process, so we can go ahead and guide as to when we can lock in your rate and set the expectations up front properly. Because sometimes not only do you need your surveys and your plans and specs, but sometimes you may need an address.
Right.
So it is a laundry list of things that you want to go ahead and get up front and done. But your lender will help you.
Right. So, but basically what you're saying is, the first thing is obviously get the application taken care of.
Absolutely.
So first know that you want to build a house. Say you already choose us to be your builder, right? And then we pass them along to you since we're approved with you guys in Centennial.
Correct.
And so then they do the application. Then the next step technically should be us getting the plans, the engineer, you know, the stamps, the surveys, all that.
Right.
And once we have all that, that whole package, then we can hand it back off to you to
Correct.
where then we can get the addresses, all the other final details put together before a loan gets closed, correct?
100%.
Okay.
Exactly. And it's also critical that we emphasize that those plans and specs are needed relatively upfront. Now, I'm not going to say right up front, not at the moment of application, but I would say it would be part of phase one. Reason being is because we use that for the appraisal.
Right.
And appraisal typically falls under phase one.
Okay. All right. And typically, if you guys want to know more about kind of what the building timelines are looking like for 2024, we actually create a video so you guys can click that. And that's going to break down how long it's going to take to get engineered plans so that we can basically make sure that we get the timeline correct from the time that we start building or basically getting introduced to you guys and planning to getting a loan with Centennial Bank or your preferred lender, basically. And then we can move forward from there. So definitely go and check that video out at the top, either the top left or top right. So going back to that is along with the timelines that we're seeing right now for the loan process, right? So obviously Centennial Bank currently, they do one-time close, right?
Correct.
Right up front.
Single close, yes.
So once we have all the docs, all the stamp plans, all that good stuff, all the checklist is completed, then we can close on the loan, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. The time frame I usually like to give from application is anywhere from 30 to 60 days.
Sure.
Is a typical.
Okay.
It's not one size fits all.
Right.
Because everybody's slightly different.
Right.
But for the most part, you can comfortably say 30 to 60 days from application, you'll be at closing.
Okay. And then from closing, then that's when all the money gets deposited into an escrow account or the bank account, and then it gets, obviously, the first check gets sent to the builder.
Correct.
So then everything can be underway, right?
Correct.
So let's just say the loan has closed, we're moving forward. What does that look like in terms of, draw schedule? Does the lender work closely with the builder in terms of the draw schedule, or is that all basically on the client?
Great question as well. So when it comes to disbursement of funds, we can handle that one of two ways. We can give the funds directly to the builder, or we can hand it to the client, to the borrower, to give it to you guys.
Okay.
That's up to you guys. It's subjective. Some people don't want to deal with the money. Some people do want to deal with the money.
Right.
But the way that works, just so people understand, is that the builder nor the client can access the next round of funds until they have completed the first, not the first phase, but the first agreed upon draw.
Yep. Right.
So, and what that entails is passing inspection is the most important thing. And then typically after the inspection, we can release the funds within 24 to 72 hours from that.
Okay.
That point on. Yep.
All right.
And then also one more thing I may add is that typically we like to draw up the schedules, the disbursement schedules, around 10. So
Okay.
as most lenders will do 7.
Yep.
We've been doing 10 just
Okay.
to kind of
Sure.
make it a little bit more even so people can understand a little bit more of the
Right.
disbursement.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So 10 different draws, roughly. Roughly, obviously, that'll change depending on the loan.
Correct.
All right. And so what changes have we seen from 2023 to 2024? I know that obviously now this is different from the custom route, but mainly on the investor side, right? A lot of banks are tightening down on giving construction loans to investors that are looking to build a lot of spec homes, right?
Correct.
And I know that Centennial Bank was one of the last banks, I guess, here in the general area of Southwest Florida to really pull that away for a little bit. Now, we don't know when that option may or may not come back.
Correct.
But how has that impacted what you've been seeing with some investors, would you say?
Absolutely. So that was done on the based internally. It wasn't necessarily done because of the market.
Right.
Because there are still some lenders that still do investment construction portfolio products.
But I may say there's a huge caveat on that because it comes from private money. And private money right now is 10% plus 2 points or 11% plus 2 points.
It's expensive. Correct.
Oh, yeah.
It's gotten expensive when it comes to that. And that was an internal decision we made based on the market. But again, not all lenders have suspended those products.
Right.
What we decided to do is to put that on our commercial books. So instead of requiring a 25% down payment now, we're requiring a 35% down, and it's being held on the commercial side of the portfolio.
Yeah, so it moved from residential to commercial in 2023, at the end of 2023 for 2024. And obviously the loan percentages, down payment went up. So now how does that affect, say, a person that's looking to build a primary residence? What are the different down payment options that have changed from 2023 to 2024?
So really the major changes were mostly done on the investment side. So when it comes to people wanting to own their primary and secondary home, the fundamentals still apply. You're 15% down at least. We can still value your lot as down payment. There's a few parameters that slightly vary there, based on how long you've owned the lot. But for the most part, primary and secondary home loans are still the same. Fannie and Freddie did increase loan limits per counties, nationwide, I should say. But they do fluctuate per county, so they're not all the same. But other than that, building and primary and secondary homes are still relatively strong and same programs as we've seen in 2023.
All right, cool. So since there's not too many major changes on the primary or, secondary home side, it's mainly on the investment side, right? And moving forward with that, because we have a couple clients that want to do that exact same thing. We have to bring them to the commercial side. So it is a little bit more challenging because obviously they have to come up with a larger down payment. So I have seen obviously a decrease. Builders are pulling back from building spec homes just for that reason, and the lack of let's just say buyer interest in your typical spec homes, right? More people want that semi-custom, custom home feel, but they obviously don't want to pay a custom home price tag. But once again, the prices don't have to be astronomically high for a custom home, just depending on what finishes. It all comes down to the finishes. Every builder can build the exterior of the shell pretty much the same, but when it comes to the finishes, that's where it gets expensive, and that's why people associate custom with high cost. Because most people that build custom homes, they put in a little bit higher end finishes than what a typical builder would for spec homes. So what would you say are some takeaway notes for some people that are watching right now in terms of if they're looking to get a construction loan for a primary or secondary home, what are a couple pieces of advice that you would give them for 2024?
Know your builder. Know your builder. I would make sure that your builder is in cohesiveness with your lender, because that makes things a lot easier. Facilitates. Ask if your builder is already on the approved list for your lender. Kind of have an idea of what their models might look like, the plans and specs, so you kind of have an idea of what you're going to get. Because if you do go to the design center and all of a sudden decide to upgrade beyond what you had originally thought, you can run into some other issues. So my biggest piece of advice would be just know your builder, know your budget, understand that when you go to the design center, things can elevate. So that being said, be cautious when you're in the design center and make sure you don't pick the highest finishings of everything. I think that would be my biggest piece of advice, is just know your builder, know your lender, and know what you're working with so your numbers don't fluctuate that much throughout the process. Because if they do fluctuate, not only they fluctuate for the builder, the lender, and client, and title company for that matter. So it's a good piece of advice to know your builder and lender and know your numbers up front.
And I think we also have to keep in mind the appraised value. We can't go crazy on the finishes because that may not be sustainable for the local community. We had an issue with one build recently on that, was a little bit higher in finishes than the typical other homes around there. And so the appraisal is a big thing, I think, for people that are building custom homes, especially in Northport. I mean, with the average home price being so low, and if you're building a luxury home, it is a little bit more difficult to appraise. So you have to know your neighborhood and know your community.
Absolutely. Yeah, you definitely want to be cognizant of your surroundings, because if you have the nicest home in the neighborhood, sometimes it doesn't always appraise. I mean, it's understandable what we're experiencing because it's a newer neighborhood, but that being said, you might want to know that going into it.
No, exactly. Yeah, for sure. But I appreciate you taking the time kind of breaking down kind of the changes that happened from 2023 to 2024 and kind of what that loan process looks like. So if you guys have any other further questions about getting a new construction loan, definitely contact Manny with his contact information down below in the description. And if you guys want to work with us and our custom home building company, our contact information will be down at the bottom of this video too, where we can walk you guys through all the way from the land acquisition to basically handing the keys over to your brand new dream home. And if you guys are looking to move to whether it be Northport, Sarasota, Osprey, Venice, or any of the surrounding communities, we have a dedicated buyer's relocation guide for all those areas, along with, if you guys want to know more about the new construction market here in Sarasota County, we do have a dedicated VIP email list that you guys can join 100% free. All those links are in the description down below. But with that being said, I appreciate you guys checking out this video, and we will catch you guys all next week.